Hi everyone, I'm Hunter, also known as DJ Crisp, and joining me today is Lisa Ledin from KAZU, where she hosts news shows in the mornings and afternoons on NPR on the Monterey Bay Area 90.3 KAZU, such as All Things Considered on Mondays and Tuesdays, morning edition every Friday, and weekend edition on Saturdays. Lisa is a graduate of UC Berkeley and majored in journalism. She has 30 years of radio broadcast experience, and she has produced classical music shows, hosted radio documentaries that resulted in the book Nelson Burton, My Life in Jazz, and has even interviewed the great Leonard Nimoy. So, Lisa, before we jump into our discussion today about radio, I first have to ask, you interviewed Spock? Like,
It was an adrenaline-filled thrill. He was a chain smoker. He was very interesting. I don't know why he was in Aspen, which is where I was working at the time. A lot of artists come there for various reasons. But yes, that was a feather in my cap. That was fun.
but yeah, I guess let's hop into our questions.
You're tuned to 91.9 FM.
You're tuned to 91.9 FM.
KSPB.
Pebble KSPB Pebble Beach.
KSPB Pebble Beach.
KSPB. Pebble Beach.
KSPB Pebble Beach, a community service of Stevenson School. Find us on the web at kspb.org.
So, for my first question, what got you into radio? Like, this whole, business?
Well, I grew up with transistor radios. I mean, my dad always had them going in his ears listening to the Giants and football games and so on. It was just a part of our life, radio. And I majored in journalism at UC Berkeley and went to serve an internship at a television station. And you know what? The cameras and all that, it just wasn't for me. I ended up volunteering to train at a radio station in Aspen, Colorado, and I got a job. And that was it. I loved it. What do I love about radio? It's theater, it's the immediacy, it's the teamwork, it's radio has so much potential because you have to use your senses, and it's kind of like the theater of the imagination.
Nice. Yeah, I know a lot of the people in the studio where we work at, we just like the idea of not being seen, I guess. Most of us, I know for me, I'm very stage frightful. I don't like being on camera that much, but it's, the idea of being able to share what we think and everything, just,
Hunter, I'm glad you brought up that point, because they even have a saying about that television is more for hams. It's for extroverts. It's for people who kind of like being out there. There's an intrigue about and a mystery about somebody just knowing you through your voice. So much can be communicated just through hearing and voice.
Nice. Tell me about the shows you've hosted throughout the years. What is your favorite show, and how did you get these ideas for the shows?
Okay. When I started out in Aspen, I created shows where I had musicians visit and perform, and then I would interview them, and God, that was fun. That was for the Aspen Music Festival, and it was all genres of music, from jazz to classical to bluegrass to whatever. As I moved along, I worked in Cincinnati, and I did oral history, and I ended up doing a documentary on the early Cotton Club, music back in the day with the jazz just in its heyday, and that was really fun. Oral history, you are finding these old timers before they're gone and letting them tell their stories and direct you to music you would never have listened to otherwise. But when I came here to the Monterey Peninsula, I worked at a classical station called KBOC, and I started a kids show called Cabbages and Kings. And I think that was my favorite show, because if you are entertaining children, you cannot bore them for one moment. You need to keep their attention. So it was really good training in making the program vivid and listenable and entertaining. I am also grateful for shows that I did that tell people about the history of the community, about culture of the community. I've had arts talk and history minutes and that kind of thing. That's apart from just hosting shows that are on the air. Those are shows I created.
Nice. What are some like essential skills that journalists need to like have while interviewing others?
Number one, you have to be a good communicator. Number one. Having a good voice helps. Having a love of radio, having an insatiable curiosity, all of those things are really good skills to have. When I first started in radio, I read aloud a lot to exercise my voice. Then I had to hear myself over the air when I did commercials and things, and that trains you too. Women's voices can sometimes be more elevated and higher, so I purposely kind of lowered my voice so it wouldn't sound irritating. When I first started, I felt somewhat like a happy chipmunk, kind of lowered it. That was a better sound. You want to be talking as if there's one ear. One trick in being a good radio announcer is pretending you're just speaking to one person. And if you're nervous, you can kind of choose that person. Maybe it's your mother, maybe it's your best friend, but you will almost imagine yourself speaking to that person that makes you feel comfortable and makes you feel that what you're saying is important. Now, I am going to take a break here because it's time for me to do a radio break. We're actually on the air right now. So what you're going to hear in 1 minute is a promotion of a program called All Things Considered, which is really popular. You've heard it? Yeah. And then I'll tag it with an underwriter. NPR is not a commercial radio station, but we do have people who support the station and pay to have their names on the air. Like here we're going to have Santa Cruz Direct Primary Care and Applied Solar Energy. So I will be announcing that, but it won't be like, razzle dazzle commercial. It'll be just straightforward.
Nice.
You're on 90.3 KAZU, where support comes from Santa Cruz Direct Primary Care, welcoming their new physician, Dr. Neil Palakurthi, to their primary care office. Now enrolling new patients. More information online at santacruzdpc.com. Partly sunny today, temperatures in the upper 50s to low 60s and no talk of rain. Clouds overnight, low to mid 40s, and Sunday, partly sunny, and Monday will be pretty much the same kind of weather.
You are wrong with these headlines.
Like, let's talk podcasts.
Okay.
They're not brand new, but they're slowly becoming more and more popular with lots of people creating their own podcasts. And I just want to know, like, what's going to happen to radio with, the whole podcast thing becoming popular?
Oh boy, I'm afraid radio is suffering from this. It used to be that our saving grace was as long as you have a radio in a car, you're going to listen to radio. But now there's Sirius and it's streaming and you have all these options. Also, what's happening to local news is a question. I mean, that's where you used to get a lot of your local news was on local radio. So I think it's going to morph into something else. It may not be something you associate with FM in the future. Like AM got lost by the wayside. There are very few AM stations. But there's something about getting in your car and turning on the radio, and as long as you have that, there's going to be radio. How long that will last, I don't know. For example, you are our future. Do you listen to radio? I don't think so. So
Yeah, or to listen to
I
podcasts.
never imagined it would be anything like this. When I was a teenager, you know, it was the whole hippie period, and music was just fantastic. There was Beatles, there was blues, there was folk music, there was just everything. You would hear it on the radio. You would go and get your album, and you would listen to your album. And that makes me, you know, really antiquated, because that's just, it's so different now. So what happens in the future is kind of fascinating, to see what will happen to radio. We're hanging on here.
Yeah. I guess a follow-up question to that would be like, do you know like what we could maybe, or do you have an idea of what we could do to maybe make radio more popular than podcasts, or do we just have to adapt with you know, the new times and find a way to do
think
that?
that, for example, what you're doing, Hunter, is good. You're doing a radio show as a high school student, and you're doing this report. You're showing interest. As long as there's interest, perhaps it won't die. And you know, if you found and rediscovered radio, created it anew for the new generations, you could keep it going. There used to be also radio theater. You would hear the Lone Ranger and, you know, these old programs that are before television, they were on the radio. I'm just wondering if you could take all the advantages radio has that podcasts may not have and create something new. I don't know.
Nah, I think that's, like, I agree with you. It's going to be interesting to see what the future holds, especially for radio. It's a very, you know, unique world we're in right now, especially with everything changing, devices becoming more and more complex. AI. So
AI could imitate me. You know, I could have a voice imitating me on the radio. I wouldn't even have to work.
And that's exactly what's like.
But what about the human element? We always have to remember that we have to keep the human element going, or what is our purpose?
Yeah. Especially with like the whole Writers and Everything Act that happened, I think, was it last year? Like, it's scary to think about like AI taking over a bit, but it could happen. Like, you know, they could write, like, I've seen AI make music, and that's like crazy. So it is going to be interesting what the future holds for radio.
I think I would like to end this by saying that we have to keep our feet on the ground. We have to wiggle our toes in the sand. We have to remember who we are. We're human beings. And keep a certain distance from this technology so it doesn't make us forget who we are.
Yeah. All right. My final question. How did I do interviewing you?
Fantastic.
Is there any like improvements I need to work on?
I liked your flow. I liked your interaction. I thought that your questions were well conceived, that you've given it some thought. So I'd give you a strong complimentary grade.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, well, technically that wasn't the final question. I have one more.
Okay.
Can we get a tour of the studio?
Absolutely. I think you want me to do it right now? Should we just...
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So here, this is master control, and this is our board, and you're looking at a kind of a backbone for the programming that I am announcing. And then if we have pre-recorded things, I would fire them up over here. I've got my little mouses here. Another thing I'd like to say about radio is that if there is a storm, or if there's flooding and you cannot get electricity, radio is here. You get in your car and you can turn it on and we can tell you, hey, evacuate, or this or that. It is a tool for communication. The transmitter equipment is in here. I take readings every morning, and you know, if there's an alarm, I would be observant. And we have a chief engineer who handles the real important stuff. And we have a kitchen. And Dylan Music, our morning man, he sits here. He does much more than just being on the air in the morning. Here, this is just a kind of a Go Team fun billboard. This is another recording studio. And it's comfortable, you know, nobody has to be perfectly neat. We're always running around, catching deadlines and so on. And as I said, this building at one time, these were barracks for four-doored soldiers. So that's why we have this kind of structure. And they're all gone because it's Saturday today, main reception. These are all the awards this radio station has won. Oh, wow. Edward R. Murrow.
But yeah, thank you so much. You wanna hit the camera with the line that you say I'm starting there, that you say on the radio where it's like KAZ.
This is listener supported, member funded 90.3 KAZU. And let's not lose the romance of radio. I'm one of its last bystanders here. Okay.
Thank you. And let me hit them with our radio station, KSPB 91.9 FM in Pebble Beach. Tune in whenever you want and listen to us have some fun on the radio.